Hi, my name is Brian Caffo, and this is the lecture on non-significance. What I'm going for in this lecture is to consider the instances where I shouldn't call it non-significance, just where the results of the test or a confidence interval or whatever are a little bit on the equivocal side. It's kind of easy if your tests are highly non-significant, it's clear there's no effect, or they're highly significant, it's clear that there is effect. But what do you do if things are right on the margin, maybe just under or just over? So what sorts of things are you thinking about? So now I have this cartoon here where you get a p-value of 0.051. So what are you most concerned with a marginal effect? Well, there's lots of things that could be going on. One is, right, you could just be unlucky. There really is no effect, and there's just some noise in the system, and you just happen to get a p-value or hypothesis test that was close to significant or just under significant, but there really is no effect. And that is unfortunate. An unfortunate case. You're unlucky, but another thing that we're often concerned about is this idea of power. Namely, was the study set up in the first place to really adjudicate whether or not there was an effect? So, in the presence of equivocal results, the first question you want to ask yourself was the study set up for failure by not being adequately powered? So what is power? Power is the probability of detecting an effect that is truly there. You want more power, okay? So as an example, when you're designing a study, studies that have a larger sample size are going to have more power. Studies that are trying to detect a bigger effect are going to have more power. It's easier to see an elephant than it is to see a mouse, right? So if there's a bigger effect, it's easier to find. So you're going to have more power if the true effect is larger. And this less noise that's in the system, the smaller the variance, the more power you have. The less uncertainty in the system that you're studying, the more power you're going to have. And so often people will do power calculations prior to a study just in order to make sure that they've set themselves up for success, that they know that they have a specific high probability of detecting an effect if it's actually there. I think what you're often concerned with after a study is if the power was not adequate, or at least having a discussion of whether the study was really set up for success. Unfortunately, post hoc, there's not that much that can be done about power. The obvious thing, which is most of the times not feasible, is collecting more data or doing another study. Okay, that will obviously work. Okay, but that's often out of your control. But an idea that everyone flirts with is checking the power post hoc, using the effects that you saw and doing some sort of power calculation post hoc. This is generally a bad idea. I think this, if you're doing this, you need to be very sophisticated in the field of statistics to understand the pitfalls and so on. Usually what are called post hoc power calculations are a terrible idea. So in general, the idea of trying to, via the data, figure out what the power of your study was after you've already conducted it is almost always a bad idea. So what are you left with? If you can't collect more data or do another study, we've already said that doing some sort of post hoc calculations to quantify power is usually a bad idea, or at least if you're going to do that and you don't know a lot about it, you should at least contact a PhD statistician who will probably try and talk you out of it anyway. All that you're left with is a critical discussion of the strength of the study, and that's your main recourse, is basically trying to figure out, well, should we have seen an effect in this study? Is the sample size similar to what we see in other studies where we do see an effect? This kind of critical review is what you have at this point for understanding this equivocal result. Okay, so my main point here is that in the presence of these kinds of marginal results, one of the main points of discussion you want to have is a discussion over whether or not your study was set up for success by being adequately powered.